So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank the national regulator for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today, despite the fact that this is a rare and unique opportunity for me to do this in Greek. It's been suggested that it would be good that I do this in English for the benefit of all our attendees. Having said that, some of my slides are in Greek, some of my slides are in English, so normally I hope all of you won't have a challenge in following them. From my end, what I'd like to do today a bit is to discuss some of the challenges that we see around security, some of the challenges we see around privacy, a few thoughts about where the technology is going, but also some, let's say, thoughts on where we see innovation and growth in information security, especially from the Greek perspective, given that innovation, growth, investment is something that the country is very much focused in right now. So, first of all, I think we need to come to terms with the fact that there are 5 major tendencies in the technology space right now, 5 major trends. The previous speaker spoke in quite some detail about the mobile aspect. Yes, the era of PCs gradually is never going to be completely phased out perhaps, but it's certainly gradually going away. I'm not going to go into much detail on that, why everything will, or more and more things become mobile, iPhones, iApps, iPads. But it's worth perhaps mentioning much more and trying to go into a bit more detail around the remaining 4 trends. And one of those 4 trends is cloud computing. The fact that gradually, more and more, our devices are becoming thinner. And when I'm talking about the devices being thinner, I don't mean in terms of actual size, but in terms of actual information they hold. So more and more we will be dependent upon information which exists in data centers, upon information which are being stored remotely and are being downloaded remotely. That will facilitate their access from anywhere, anytime, but it will pose also very interesting questions and very interesting challenges on things like, I need to have access from any device, therefore I need to be able to authenticate securely. I need to be able to confirm my identity from any device and to any network. The other aspect, which we don't often talk about, is the exponential growth of information. The fact that every year the amount of data we generate doubles. Think about it. Think how many digital pictures have you taken this year and how many digital pictures you will take next year. Imagine that, I've heard a number that the total amount of data currently available on the internet equates to 300 billion DVDs. So we can fill up this room with DVDs and probably they would still, the DVDs would flow outside of the room. And by the way, next year is going to be 600 billion DVDs. We would need 2 halls of this size and still we wouldn't have enough. The other tendency, the other great trend in technology is that of virtualization. What does that mean? Is the fact that hardware devices in the large data centers stop anymore being physical and become more and more logical. What does that mean? It means that rather than me having 3 servers, I'm actually having 1, which I then create different compartments within, logical compartments within, and I put those other 2 servers that I have actually phased out. What are these consequences? What does this mean from a privacy and security standpoint? Well, first of all, the way we used to do security was based around protecting a particular piece of hardware. If now that hardware doesn't exist, it's logical, our approach to security has to change. If the amount of data we generate doubles, well, suddenly the resources that we have available in our hands in order to protect that information shrink. We actually have to accept that there will be successful attacks. Therefore, our focus needs to be not on protecting everything, because the one who defends everything defends nothing, but rather has to be on how do we narrow our defenses to the things that are really important, and how are we able to mitigate an incident once that incident takes place. The 5th element is the exponential growth of, let's say, security incidents, and the fact that the large connectivity that we've been having allows us also greater knowledge and ability to talk about them. Some aspects of the bigger numbers, so some aspects of the global numbers that we've seen around security threats. Don't focus on everything, but let's focus on the things which I think are really, really important. First of all, globally, last year, Symantec blocked 5.5 billion attacks. That's not all the attacks that happen around the world, because we don't protect everything. And there might be also attacks that we missed. So the number that you see is a total fraction to the absolute number of security incidents. The other aspect is the 403 million unique malware, million unique viruses. Why is that? Why is that huge number? Actually, 50%, so the 200 million of these viruses are generated by 10 families only. 10, it's a bit like 10 different versions of the flu generate 200 million subversions of the same microbe, of the same illness. Why is that happening? Very simply because the attackers are trying to evade detection. And the other thing which is really important to notice is the increase in mobile vulnerabilities. Why? Because we see the shift, we see the move, we see the trend whereby suddenly it's no longer the PC, it's also the mobile device. Now, who gets attacked? Actually, whereas in the past it used to be that the financial services had the biggest percentage of security incidents, governments hold now the highest absolute number. Why? Because in government they're interesting sensitive information, personal data, financial information, and obviously the national security component. Next to it comes manufacturing and finance services, and after that, IT. Interestingly, also, you will see things like education. Why? Because in the education sector, the data that are held are often very personal and yet not often very well protected. So, in terms of absolute numbers, 29% is government, but if you put a few sectors together, you see that the vast majority of incidents actually affects critical infrastructure. Who gets targeted? That was a study that we did recently, and it turned out some interesting results. Historically, people believe that the boss is going to get a targeted attack, the CEO. Actually, that's not true. Only 25% of the targeted attacks will target senior executives. Why? Because it's much more effective to social engineer, to basically gradually build your attack through stages than to go actually and hit the top. A good example is, human resources. Why would somebody attack the HR person? Why would somebody attack someone who is managing, recruitment? Well, because the human resources guys usually have a job that involves receiving emails from people that they don't know and opening attachments of people that they don't know with documents called CVs. Think about it. Every lesson that we've done in information security begins with don't open emails from people you don't know and don't execute attachments of people that we don't know. Yet, the human resources officer, that's his actual job. So, from that perspective, I'm saying this to you in order to understand a bit how we in the security landscape need to be thinking very, very differently from the rest of you. We need to think, we need to be in the mind of the attacker. Sticking still on mobile, what are the challenges around mobile and how are we focusing around protecting mobile more effectively? That's an example of the type of threats that one would see in the mobile phone space. Threats around collecting data, threats around tracking users, threats around sending content, and then traditional ones more associated with fraud, with finance, with stealing information, with sending SMSs to inappropriate sites and things like that. So the whole idea is that also the landscape is changing. The type of incidents that we see affecting privacy historically on the PC, we started seeing them also going in the mobile. What do they usually try to take? This is the stuff that they try to take. Credit card numbers, financial information. The vast majority of these kind of incidents are crime-driven. And then things like username, passwords, access credentials, just to allow people to, let's say, grow more their footprint, their access to the kind of information that they want in order to expand their network. Now, I told you a few things about, let's say, the security, privacy aspect. I think that no presentation on things like information security would be complete without touching also on the latest and greatest thing. Some of you may have seen Flamer. Some of you may have heard about the recent security incident that affected the Iranian oil fields. This new cyber weapon that has been discussed. Flamer is